My name is Liam.
I've been thinking
I'm
a lot about
28 and I
this.
work construction in a small suburb just outside Seattle.
I'm really glad we're talking about it.
My life runs on routine. I wake up before the sun, pour black coffee into a dented thermos, climb into my old Ford truck, and drive toward whatever job site needs muscle that day. By noon, my shirt is soaked with sweat. My hands rough with dust and concrete. My back aching in a familiar way. I frame houses, pour slabs, fix mistakes other people never see. It's honest work, hard work. When the day ends, I head back to a tiny apartment that's barely bigger than a garage. The kitchenette smells like old takeout. The bed cacks every time I turn. It isn't much, but it's mine. I don't have big savings or big dreams. I pay my bills. On Fridays, I grab a beer with the guys if I'm not too tired. No fancy vacations, number 5-year plan, just day-to-day. I used to think that was enough. But somewhere along the way, the quiet started feeling less peaceful and more empty. It's been 2 years since my last date. Not because I was heartbroken or angry. I just got tired. Tired of the same questions, the same polite smiles that faded when people realized my life wasn't impressive. Tired of being measured like a half-finished project. I've been ghosted, stood up, and let down gently more times than I can count. Eventually, I stopped trying. Being alone felt easier, safer. No expectations meant no disappointment. Then Maya called. She's been my best friend since high school. The kind of person who sticks around even when you don't make it easy. We don't talk every day, but when we do, it matters. She didn't waste time with small talk. You can't just disappear from life, Liam. She said, you're turning into a hermit. I left it off, but she didn't back down. She told me she had someone in mind. One blind date. If it went badly, she'd buy me beer for a month. I resisted until I ran out of excuses. What was the worst that could happen? Another awkward night I'd forget by morning. The cafe was on a quiet street downtown. Exposed brick walls, mismatched wooden tables, warm yellow lights hanging from the ceiling. It smelled like coffee and cinnamon. I arrived early, picked a table near the window facing the door. Easy to spot her. Easy exit if I needed one. I scrolled through my phone, already rehearsing polite excuses. Then she walked in. She paused just inside the door, taking a breath like she was bracing herself. Shoulder-length brown hair tucked behind one ear. A loose gray long-sleeved shirt, wide-leg jeans. She carried herself like someone used to shrinking, trying not to draw attention. Her eyes met. She nodded once and walked over. Hi, you must be Liam, she said, sitting down. Her name was Laura. Her smile was polite but guarded, like she'd practiced it. We shook hands. The conversation started the way these things always do. Jobs, weather, safe topics. She told me she was a nurse at a hospital working with burn patients. I told her about construction, about liking the feeling of building something solid. It was fine, not bad, not great. Then she looked down at her sleeve and took a breath. I should probably tell you something, she said, her voice calm and flat. She rolled up her sleeve. The scars were impossible to miss. Thick raised lines running from her wrist up her arm, disappearing under the fabric toward her shoulder. They weren't faint or faded. They were permanent. The cafe noise faded away like the room had narrowed down to just us. No one wants to date me, she said. Not bitter, not angry, just honest. She watched my face, waiting. For pity, for discomfort, for the moment I'd make an excuse and leave. I didn't look away. I didn't flinch. I reached across the table and gently pulled her sleeve back down, covering her arm. Not because I was uncomfortable, but because she deserved care. I'm not going anywhere, I said. And if I left now, I think I'd regret it for the rest of my life. Her eyes searched mine like she was trying to find the lie. We sat in silence after that. Not awkward, just heavy. Finally, she spoke again. You really want to hear the story? I nodded. If you want to tell it. She told me about the fire, about waking up to smoke in the middle of the night, about the heat, the panic, the hallway already filled with flames, about burning her arm as she tried to escape, about making it out while her parents didn't. She told it like someone who had repeated it many times, steady and controlled. I survived because I was closer to the door, she said. Sometimes I wish I hadn't. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When she finished, the cafe noise slowly came back. She looked at me, then really looked at me. So she asked quietly, "Why are you still here?" I didn't have to think long because you know what it's like to survive something that changes you. I said, "And I think I need someone who understands that." She nodded once, just once. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just a blind date anymore. It was the beginning of something neither of us expected. After that night at the cafe, nothing rushed forward. There were no dramatic messages or promises. We exchanged numbers before leaving. Standing outside under the soft glow of the streetlights, the Seattle air cool and damp. She smiled, small and careful, like she wasn't sure what to expect next. I watched her walk toward the bus stop, sleeves pulled back down, shoulders still tense. I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not excitement exactly, more like quiet curiosity mixed with hope. A few days passed before either of us texted. I kept my phone face down most of the time, telling myself not to expect anything. Then one afternoon during a break at the job site, I checked my screen. "Hope your week's going okay." That was it. Simple. No pressure. I replied the same way. From there, a rhythm formed. Short messages, nothing heavy. Some days just a single line. Other days, a photo of the gray sky or her coffee cup during a break at the hospital. It felt easy, safe. We started meeting again, not calling them dates, just time. Once at a small park near my job site, another time at a quiet diner that stayed open late. She always wore long sleeves, even on warmer days. I never commented on it. She talked about her work, about helping patients learn how to live in bodies that felt unfamiliar. She spoke with care, but I could hear the weight underneath. One evening, she texted me asking if I wanted to walk. We met along a waterfront trail where the fog rolled in slow and thick. She was quieter than usual, hands tucked into her sleeves. A coworker said something today. She told me, "They said I must be strong to deal with this every day." She paused. They meant well, but it reminded me how people look at me like I'm always the sad story. She didn't text me for a couple of days after that. I didn't push. I just sent one message. "I'm here." When she replied, it was with an apology for disappearing. I told her she didn't owe me anything. That's when I started noticing how carefully she managed her distance, how she pulled back when things felt too close. I understood it more than she probably knew. I'd been doing the same thing my whole life. Different scars, same fear. A few weeks later, I told her about a volunteer build I was helping with, a playground for kids recovering from burn injuries. I mentioned it casually, not expecting much. She hesitated immediately. "I don't know if I can do that," she said, "being around all those people." I didn't argue. Later that night, I sent a message. "If you come, I'll stay right next to you the whole time." Saturday morning came bright and clear. I didn't expect to see her, but then I did. She was walking toward the site, wearing a short-sleeved yellow shirt. Her scars were fully visible in the sunlight. Her posture was stiff, her hands clenched at her sides. I walked over and smiled. "I'm really glad you came," I said. She nodded, eyes scanning the crowd. At first, a few adults glanced her away and looked away quickly, but then the kids noticed. They didn't stare. They asked questions. One little boy held up his own bandaged arm and smiled at her. "Your arm looks like mine," he said. Laura froze. I caught her eye and nodded, letting her know I was there. Slowly, she knelt down and started talking to them. She told them a story about a fire princess who fought flames and survived. The kids listened like she was magic. By the end, they they were laughing and asking her to sign their shirts. I stood back watching. For the first time, she wasn't hiding. She was glowing. Later, near the swing set, she pulled me aside. I never thought I could do that, she said. But having you there made it possible. I meant what I said. I told her, you don't have to do this alone. After that day, something shifted. She smiled more. She texted first sometimes. We grew closer slowly. Until the night, my phone rang from an unknown number. It was the hospital. Laura had collapsed. From exhaustion. I drove there without thinking. When I found her room, she looked small in the bed, pale under the lights. She tried to smile. I didn't want you to see me like this, she said. I sat beside her and took her hand. She cried then. Not quietly. She told me how tired she was, how scared she was that one day I decided was too much. I'm staying, I told her. I'm not going anywhere. I meant it. And for the first time, she let herself believe it. The days after Laura collapsed at the hospital changed something between us. Not in a loud way, in a quiet, steady one. I took a few days off work and spent them sitting beside her bed, listening to the soft beeping of machines and the distant sounds of carts rolling through the halls. I brought her tea from the cafeteria, even though it tasted terrible. I read to her when she was too tired to talk. Sometimes we just sat there, her hand resting in mine, neither of us saying anything. One afternoon, she finally looked at me and said, "You don't have to keep doing this." I shook my head. I want to. That seemed to hit her harder than anything else. She turned her face away, tears slipping down quietly. She told me how scared she was of needing someone. How after the fire, she learned to survive alone because it felt safer than depending on anyone who might leave. Letting me stay scared her more than the pain ever had. When she was discharged, I drove her home. Her apartment was small and warm, filled with plants and books. It felt lived in but lonely, like it had been waiting for someone to really step inside. Before I left, she asked me to follow her down the hallway. She opened the door and turned on the light. The room was covered in paintings, faces half hidden in shadow, arms marked with scars, bright colors cutting through dark ones. Pain and strength mixed together on every canvas. She told me she started painting after the fire when words weren't enough. "These are beautiful," I said honestly. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Do you ever get scared of staying with someone who's not fully healed?" I didn't hesitate. "We're all cracked in some way. I'm not afraid of yours." That night, something settled between us. We didn't call it anything. We didn't need to. Weeks passed. Summer rolled in slowly, the Seattle fog lifting now and then to reveal blue skies. Laura started wearing short sleeves more often. Not all the time, but enough to notice. Each time it felt like a small victory. We drove to the coast one weekend, walked barefoot along the sand, laughed as the cold water rushed over our feet. She looked free in a way I hadn't seen before. I took her to meet my mom not long after. I was nervous. I always was. But my mom didn't hesitate. She hugged Laura, looked at her arms, and said, "You're strong." "I can see that." No pity, no questions. Laura cried in the car afterward, her hand gripping mine. Back in the city, our lives blended naturally. I helped her with her art classes for kids dealing with trauma. She listened to my stories about work, even the boring ones. We cooked together, failed together, laughed at how bad we were at following recipes. One evening, sitting on her balcony with the city lights flickering below, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "I used to think no one could love someone like me," she said softly. I pulled her closer. "Turns out you were wrong." She smiled, resting her scarred arm against mine, not hiding it at all. And in that moment, I knew we were building something real. Not perfect, not easy, but solid. Just like the things I built with my hands every day. Only this time, it was a life. By the time fall arrived, Laura and I didn't need to define what we were anymore. We just were. It showed in the small things. In the way she left her mug on my kitchen counter like it belonged there. In how my apartment slowly stopped feeling like a place I slept and started feeling like somewhere I lived together. There were no big speeches or promises, just consistency, showing up, staying. Laura still had hard days, nights when she woke from dreams she wouldn't talk about right away. Mornings when she stared at her arm longer than usual before getting dressed. When that happened, I didn't try to fix it. I'd sit beside her. Sometimes I'd take her hand. Other times, I'd just be there, letting silence do its work. She told me once that this was the first time someone hadn't tried to rush her healing. That alone made her feel safer than any words could. She kept teaching art to the kids at the community center. I watched her grow more confident each time, standing in front of them with her sleeves rolled up, her scars visible and unhidden. The kids didn't see damage. They saw proof that pain didn't get the final say, and so did I. Every time she laughed with them, every time she encouraged one of them to be brave, I felt proud in a way I hadn't felt before. My life didn't suddenly turn impressive. I still woke up early. Still drank bad coffee from a thermos. Still came home sore and tired. But now there was someone waiting for me. Someone who asked how my day really was and meant it. Someone who saw value in my simple life instead of judging it. One evening, as we sat on the balcony watching the sky darken, Laura traced a finger along one of the scars on her arm. I spent so long believing these made me unlovable. She said that they were all anyone would see. I looked at her and shook my head. They're part of your story, not the whole thing. She smiled, resting her head against my chest. The city hummed below us, steady and alive. In that moment, everything felt right. Not perfect, but real. Love didn't come to us like a movie scene. It arrived quietly, built from patience, honesty, and the choice to stay when leaving would have been easier. We didn't erase each other's scars. We learned how to live with them. How to carry them without shame. When Laura once said no one wanted to date her, she believed it. When I told her I wasn't going anywhere, I didn't know how true that would become. But standing there with her, feeling her steady breath and the warmth of her body against mine, I knew something for sure. Sometimes love isn't about finding someone without cracks. It's about finding someone who sees them and stays anyway. And that was enough for